see dope people.
Welcome back to another episode of Dope People. I am your host, Hayden M. Green, Brooklyn's favorite polymath. Still nobody has challenged me on that, so I'm rolling with it. And my show is about dope people. I know a bunch of dope people, and I want you to get to know these people and get a little bit of a taste of who they are. And some of you were like, well, what's this term dope? Well, dope's an old school term where that means great, means awesome. And so I know a bunch of awesome people, and I think you should know them as well. Today, we have a very special guest. And it is because he is probably one of the more busier people in the world right now. But he took time to be on our show. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to put your hands together for Lucien Metellus. Give it up for Lucien, everybody. Lucien, welcome.
What's going on, Hayden? How are you?
I am doing very well. How are you today?
I'm blessed. I cannot complain. And even if I did, who would listen, right?
Right. People don't listen when we complain around. There's too much stuff going on.
Exactly.
Well, Lucien, I wanted to take some time to thank you. For those of you who don't know who Lucien is the incoming international president of alphaphialpha Fraternity Incorporated. And we are blessed to have you on the show. So thank you for taking some time. We start the show, however, by getting a litmus test of how my guest understands the word dope, right? So, Lucien, who is the dopest person that you either know or have met at one point in time? I'd love to hear that.
So I could say you, but that would be pandering. But you are pretty dope. You are pretty dope. You are pretty dope in of yourself. My wife is very dope. She's amazing. Both of my kids are dope. But I'm gonna do a little bit of recency bias. Last weekend we had the inauguration. The inauguration for me becoming general president of alphaphialpha, and we had a gala. And what I'm going to do is I want to shout out everybody that was at that event because they were all dope. You saw Black excellence at the highest level. Like, everywhere. I don't know if you were there, Hayden. You didn't. I don't know if you felt it, but it felt like a reunion of some kind, right? It was just like you had doctors, lawyers, educators, people in the entertainment industry, people podcasting, people from college, people that didn't go to college, people from Africa, the West Indies, and just reminds us how dope our people are in all those spaces. And it's just like having almost over 700 people in one room. It wasn't even about me. It was about how dope we are as people, even with everything going on in the world, even with all the craziness, the 92% of Black women, the 82% of Black men. Even though we didn't get what we wanted, it didn't stop us from being dope. And that's when you really know that you're dope, when no matter what's going on in the world, no one's going to stop us from doing what we do best.
Listen, Lucien, I have to tell you, that event was exactly what those people in that room needed in that moment. Really, just to be around our excellence, just to be around people who share those kind of values and share that idea of what it means to be Black in this country and what it means to be progressive in this country. It was absolutely perfect. It came at the exact right time. And we're doing it's all Founders Month, right? So everybody has their Founders Day, except for the three organizations outside of January. So everybody's going to their little, well, not little, most of them
big events, right?
Right. Everybody's going to their events and celebrating their organizations, but to really be at the inauguration and be among people who are from a number of different organizations, a number of different walks of life, and as you mentioned, a myriad of different ways of life and appreciations, really was the shot in the arm that a lot of us, I know for me, needed at that moment, because it came right on the heels of some of the stuff that we now have to deal with.
Right. And I think that for us, and I think we always, and I tell this to people all the time, the toughest part, and that's what I appreciate about you, Hayden, in general, as a brother, as a brother, I consider you family, right? So as a brother, what I see is that we as people of being Black in America have always had the responsibility of being the moral consciousness of our people. And that can be consciousness of the country. I'm sorry. And that can be tiring, right?
Yes.
And it's very important that when we get an opportunity to be in spaces together and just enjoy each other, that's critically important to our mental health, to the important, for us to deal with each other. So when I think about things that are dope, I think about our people. I think about the things that we've done, the things that, and I know on social media, especially on TikTok, you hear a lot of our people saying, we need a break. Unfortunately or fortunately, we're going to have to get back in the fight, because if we stay on the sidelines, things are going to only get worse for us.
Absolutely.
And we can't be participants on the sideline. Now, don't get it wrong. I understand why some people need a break, but we're going to have to get back in the fight, because if we leave it to be, they'll just railroad us off, and we can't allow that to happen.
And this is a whole larger conversation, obviously.
Right.
I have another philosophy about what that looks like, but you're absolutely right. And I want to take the time actually right now to tell you what I think is dope about you. And it is encapsulated in the fact that when I asked you who you think is a dope person, you chose an entire room of 700 people. I think that we came up together. I came in before you, but so I've watched you come into the organization and grow in prominence, from being the MPHC of New York City president to all of these different roles in your organization. But one of the things that has always been consistent about your life in Greekdom is your understanding that it is not just about alpha phi alpha. It's not just about phi beta sigma. It's not just about kappa alpha psi, right? Like, it's about the the entire subset of the group, right? Like,
Right.
and I know you love alpha, but I know that you have a lot of love for all of the organizations. And when we were coming up, we used to have something called the Visible Greek movement. Do you remember this?
Yeah. I still have a Hotmail account, and on the tag on my Hotmail account is "Wear Para, be visible, be part of the Visible Greek movement."
Yes. And so for those of you who don't know what that is that in New York City, it's very rare that just in normal day-to-day stuff you'll see a member of the MPHC walking around. But we're everywhere, right? Like in your churches, in your banks, in your schools, all over the place, right? And so if you grew up in New York and then you go to college, sometimes the first time that you that you consciously interact with a member of the MPHC is when you see them at the undergraduate level. But then you come home and you realize your pastor is Greek, the leader of your school is Greek. And so we wanted, and we recognize that our membership in the northern states were suffering because of this, because people just didn't see us, right? Whereas in the South, you go to the grocery store, there's somebody wearing, an alpha phi alpha jacket. You go to your church and somebody has a phi beta sigma pin on their thing, right? Like, so you saw it on a regular basis, and therefore you knew it as part of the fabric. And so you and I were very much in this whole thing is like, we need to have love for all of our organizations and encourage all of our organizations to be as visible as they possibly can, so that the people who we are interacting with and doing the things in the course of our day, because of who we are and the organizations that we joined, all understood that there was a foundation that was propping us up. And you were a champion for all organizations, not just Alpha Phi Alpha. And that, I thought, was one of the dopest things about you.
And I appreciate that. And same for you. Like, if I ever needed anything from Phi Beta Sigma or just the Greek community in general, there were certain people that I would just hit up. And Hayden Green was one of them. Just hit you up. Hey, we need to do this. We need to do that. And it wasn't even about just the social activities. It was about being active in the political spaces, being active in our communities, being mentoring Black boys. If I remember one time, I had a young man, he was trying to get scholarships for college. I sent him to the Omegas for scholarships, even though he was in the Alpha mentoring program. I sent him to the AKA scholar. I sent him to any scholarships that we could do, right? And it was kind of like, oh, Lucien sent you? Let me hook you up, right? It wasn't even like, oh, he's not a Q. Nah, what do you need? We got, we're gonna help out. And I think especially in the Northeast, I think it's even more of a conscious effort to do that, to not be isolated, right? Because we do need each other, because we've got crime bills going on that target Black men. We've got things going on in our communities. We all came up in the same era. We grew up in the Reagan years. We grew up with the crack years. We grew up under Giuliani. We grew up under Dinkins. We grew up under all these kinds of different spaces. So all we had was each other. And I think that it's weird when you come from the outside to come and looked at us during those times, especially. It was weird for people to see us in those spaces like, hey, they get along really well. And that was weird for a lot of people, but that's how we did.
Because that wasn't the narrative, right? The narrative was that we were always fighting with each other, really being at loggerheads. But in the truth of the matter, there was this underlying understanding, whether you wore gold or crimson or blue or purple, the underlying thing was that we were all black, right? And that was the thing that really moved us forward.
Right. And that's dope as hell.
Yeah, dope as hell. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to hear what dope things you're doing as Lucien, and I can't wait to hear it because I know that you're a dope person, so it's got to be great. All right, so we'll be back in a couple.
I see dope people.
And we're back. I'm your host, Hayden Green, Dope People, and, Brooklyn's favorite Polymath, bringing you another dope person. Today, I got my Black Nerds Unite shirt. There's a funny story about this shirt when I wore it on vacation one time. But one of my favorite Black nerds and Black intellectuals is our guest today. So, Lucien, I want to thank you so much for taking the time, but I want to hear what dope thing you are doing or have done in your life. So it could be like a one-time thing. It's like I helped this little lady across the street, or it could be something that is a regular thing where like I consistently mentor young men or whatever. What dope thing are you doing?
So 2 dope things really quick. The first one, I think you'll appreciate because we're in the same fraternity when it comes to that. Being a dad is super dope. Being a dad is, it gives you gray hair. But seeing, like, hey, you see, right? But seeing that young person, that young boy, that young girl are both finding themselves and your help guiding them. And then when they get so independent, it's a good thing. Even though I miss my son, certain things I used to do with my son. He's like too cool to do it with dad now. But I remember that. But I guess because we grew up, when I grew up, I remember that stage. And so now I get to see kind of him do what I did, except in a different time with social media and all of that, but him do what I did, right? And that's dope. The other thing that's dope that we're working on is we're really focused on Black men's mental health. I know you and I know plenty of Black men that have committed suicide. And right now I'm working on a big initiative in Alpha to not necessarily get them do mental health in the organization, but make sure that our brothers are connected through 2 direct mental health spaces for directly influence. And I know we're a majority Black organizations. Of course, we have our non-historically Black people, such as our Caucasians, Asian people of Asian descent. But when we talk about our Black and Latino people, we're underrepresented in terms of mental health access. And so I want to increase that, not because this as well, being college educated Black men from our era are the least likely to seek mental health assistance because we're always burdened with expectation. And what I want to do is I want to break that stigma of Black male expectation. No matter what line you live on in the Black male experience, what you find is that there's an expectation that comes with you as soon as you enter college and you get a degree and then you graduate. And then it's like your emotional availability is no longer valid. Your emotional needs are no longer heard or accepted. So we've got to create opportunities, because the last thing I want to do is lose another young Black male because of the mental stresses. And then we transfer those stresses. I have to always be conscious of this. I don't want to transfer those to other men or other children or the Black boys or Black girls that I'm working with. I don't want to transfer those stresses that I've experienced onto them, or those traumas that I have onto them.
Yes, trauma is definitely contagious, and we do, and at least I'll speak for myself. I do the most that I possibly can to reverse the traumas that came with my life, and and I didn't have too much of a traumatic upbringing, but there were
Right.
just societal traumas that just are in that you don't even recognize are being layered on top
Hey,
of you.
hey, real simple example. We were in New York on September 11th.
Yeah.
If that's not a trauma that we're still all carrying, then I don't know what is.
Well, listen, it's great that you mentioned the mental illness. What's really interesting is that we end the show with a dope woman in time or a dope person in time, and I figured I had to find a dope alpha person in order to really go with the flow. And the person that I was going to go with was one of my favorite artists. His name is Donny Hathaway. You know
Of
who Donny
course.
Hathaway?
Yes,
And
indeed.
Donny Hathaway died from suicide.
Right.
And but I decided I wasn't going to go with him. But it's so crazy that you mentioned that. And like the first person that I was thinking of was Donny Hathaway. But I will say dope moment in time that I did pick was the first African American company to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. It happened in 1969. Do you have any idea what that company is?
No, go ahead. Give me the answer. I'm not going to guess.
It is, and I'll just sing the jingle for you, and it'll bring back a whole bunch of memories. More pork sausages, Mom.
Park Sausage. That was
Yes.
publicly traded? I thought it was privately held. Okay.
So Park Sausages was the first African American company to be publicly traded in
Right.
1969. Well, not the first one to be publicly traded, but it was the first one listed on the New York Stock
Your
Exchange,
stock
right? So the
exchange.
first,
Right.
right,
That's huge. Right.
and the company was created in 1959 by Henry G. Parks. And
Parks.
Henry
Right.
G. Parks was a alpha man. He pledged in 1936, I believe it is, at the Ohio State University, your
Kappa
Kappa
chapter.
chapter. Yep.
Right.
And so that's a dope moment in time. A Alpha Phi Alpha man led the first company to be listed on the New York State or the New York City Stock Exchange.
Yes, indeed. And see, and I think that even more important than him being a dope alpha man, he helped open up entrepreneurial doors for Black people in general, right? Park Sausage became this home name brand, right? But even that, just when you're the first at anything, whether it's chartering chapters in the motherland, whether it's doing something like being the first listed on the New York Stock Exchange, those moments matters because they open doors for others to come through. And look at, we have like first Black billionaire that first real rich woman that we know, right? Bethune-Cookman, right? We know about the first billionaire that was a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. We have a current billionaire that's a member, Robert Smith, that's a member of alphaphialpha. Those doors couldn't be open if there wasn't a Parks, right?
Yep.
Park Sausage. And
And
so we celebrate those opportunities.
And he sat on the board of the NAACP. He sat on the board of a whole bunch of other different organizations as well. So really a dope person, and I'm happy that I was able to find some information about him. So there's our dope person in time. So Lucien, if people are looking for you, how do they find you?
Oh, you can find me on all my socials. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. I'm trying to get off X. I might get off that soon. You can find me on TikTok. All the same handles wherever social media platforms you use. Longshot 1906 or Longshot 1906. You can find me on all those social media platforms. Those are my personal ones. You hit me up. I'll try to get back to you, but definitely, follow me on all the social medias. Look for us. Always look for us. We're trying to keep up with what's going on the country. And we're also going to make sure that we empower our people, especially our Black women. And this is the last thing I'll say. As Black men, we have an accountability to Black women. Doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything the Black women in your life say, but you need to be an advocate for them in spaces where they're not, right?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think that we have to, as Black men, we have an accountability to speak on the behalf of Black women in spaces where they're not represented, and make sure that we say, hey, Black women are not represented in those spaces.
Yep. That the one measure of a good friend and a good advocate is somebody who talks about you in rooms that you are not in. And that's exactly what you're talking about right now. Well, Luke, thank you so much. And for those of you who are watching this podcast, we need you to like and save and subscribe and share it. But also, if you have somebody who is a dope person that should be on the podcast, please have them get in contact with me and we will get them on as soon as possible. Once again, thank you to President Lou. And we want to thank you for taking the time. And for the rest of you, we will see you next week with another dope person. And until that time, go forth and be dope.